Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is going to make your blood boil. It's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty, respect, and the very fabric of professional wrestling as we know it. Before we get into the absolute chaos that erupted last night, before we dissect every single moment of what might be the most controversial attack in recent WWE history, I need you to do something for me. I need you to hit that like button right now, smash that subscribe button like Roman Reigns smashed CM Punk's dreams last night, and drop a comment telling me whether you think Roman was justified or if he crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Because trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to have some very strong opinions, and I want to hear every single one of them. Now, let's talk about what happened when the Tribal Chief decided that Monday Night Raw was his show to dominate. The arena was electric last night. The crowd was on their feet, chanting for CM Punk, the prodigal son who returned to WWE after years of bitter separation, the man who swore he would never come back, the voice of the voiceless who finally found his way home. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation because everyone knew that Punk had something important to say. He had been teasing a major announcement all week on social media, dropping cryptic hints that had the entire WWE universe speculating wildly about what could possibly be coming next. Was he going to challenge for a championship? Was he going to call someone out? Was he going to address his past grievances with the company? Nobody knew, but everyone was watching. The lights dimmed, that familiar static hit, and then those iconic words rang through the speakers. Cult of Personality blasted through the arena, and the place absolutely exploded. CM Punk walked out onto that stage with the confidence of a man who knew he belonged there, a man who had conquered his demons and returned to the place where he made his name. He had the microphone in his hand, that smirk on his face, and he was ready to address the millions watching around the world. Punk began to speak about his journey, about how he left WWE broken and bitter, about how he spent years trying to find fulfillment elsewhere, and about how he finally realized that WWE was his home, that this was where he belonged, and that he was back to do what he does best, which is be the best in the world. The crowd was hanging on every word. People in the arena were holding up their signs, their phones were out recording every moment, and the energy was palpable. This was one of those moments that reminded everyone why they fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place. The storytelling, the emotion, the connection between performer and audience, it was all there, it was all perfect, it was all building to something special. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. The music hit, but it wasn't just any music. That deep, rumbling beat, those Samoan war chants, the theme that has become synonymous with dominance and destruction over the past few years. Roman Reigns' music hit on Monday Night Raw, a show he's not even supposed to be on, a brand he doesn't belong to, and the entire arena went from excited to absolutely stunned in a matter of seconds. The Tribal Chief walked out onto that stage, flanked by Paul Heyman, his wise man, his special counsel, the man who has been by his side through over 1,300 days of championship dominance. Roman wasn't scheduled to be there. There was no advertised appearance, no hint that SmackDown's biggest star would be crossing brand lines on this particular night. But there he was, walking with that purposeful stride, that championship presence, even though he wasn't carrying a title at that moment. CM Punk's expression changed immediately. The smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of confusion mixed with defiance. Here was a man who had just been pouring his heart out to the WWE Universe, talking about his return and his future, and suddenly he was being interrupted by someone who had no business being on Raw in the first place. The two men locked eyes across that stage, and you could feel the tension radiating through your television screen. These are two of the biggest egos in professional wrestling history, two men who have built their entire careers on being the absolute best, on refusing to back down, on demanding respect and recognition. Roman Reigns has spent years telling everyone who would listen that he's the head of the table, the Tribal Chief, the undisputed everything. CM Punk built his legacy on being the guy who speaks truth to power, who doesn't care about politics or hierarchy, who will say what everyone else is thinking but too afraid to voice. Roman took the microphone from Paul Heyman and began to speak. His voice was calm at first, measured, but there was an edge to it that everyone recognized. He talked about how he's been watching CM Punk from afar, how he's seen all the hype, all the celebration, all the fanfare surrounding Punk's return. He acknowledged that Punk is talented, that Punk has accomplished great things in his career, but then Roman said something that sent shockwaves through that building. He said that CM Punk needs to understand something very important. He said that while Punk was away playing wrestler in other companies, while Punk was sitting at home bitter and angry, Roman Reigns was carrying WWE on his back. He was main eventing WrestleManias, he was breaking records, he was elevating the business to heights it had never seen before. And now that Punk has decided to come back, now that he wants to reclaim his spot in the hierarchy, he needs to acknowledge who really runs things around here. The crowd started to boo. Not just a little bit, but a full-throat rejection of what Roman was saying. Because even though Roman Reigns has been an incredible champion, even though his reign of dominance has been historic and impressive, the WWE Universe has a special connection with CM Punk that transcends championships and main events. Punk represents something different. He represents the outsider who made it to the top through sheer will and talent, the guy who wasn't supposed to succeed but did anyway, the voice that refused to be silenced no matter how hard the machine tried to quiet it. So when Roman stood there and tried to diminish what Punk means to the fans, tried to establish his own superiority over someone who had just returned home, the people rejected it viscerally and loudly. CM Punk responded exactly how you would expect CM Punk to respond. He didn't back down, he didn't show fear, and he certainly didn't acknowledge Roman as his superior. Punk grabbed his own microphone and fired back with the kind of verbal precision that has made him famous. He told Roman that he doesn't care about titles or reigns or records. He said that he came back to WWE for one reason and one reason only, to remind everyone what a real wrestler looks like, what real passion sounds like, and what happens when someone who actually loves this business steps into the ring. He told Roman that being handed opportunity after opportunity by the company doesn't make you great, it makes you a chosen one, and there's a big difference between being chosen and being the best. The crowd erupted in support, chanting Punk's name, feeling every word he spoke because it resonated with something deep inside them. That's when Paul Heyman stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker, trying to calm the situation down before it escalated beyond control. Heyman is a master manipulator, a genius at reading situations and finding diplomatic solutions when necessary. He started talking about how both men are legends, how both men have their place in WWE history, how there's room at the top for multiple stars to shine. But you could tell by the look on Roman's face that diplomacy wasn't going to work this time. This wasn't about sharing the spotlight or coexisting peacefully. This was about dominance, about territory, about who gets to be the alpha in a company that really only has room for one true leader at any given time. Roman cut Heyman off mid-sentence, which was shocking in itself because Roman never disrespects his wise man publicly. He looked directly at CM Punk and said 6 words that would set everything in motion. He said, "You need to acknowledge me." Those words, that phrase that has become Roman's signature demand over the past few years, hung in the air like a challenge, like a threat, like a declaration of war. CM Punk laughed, actually laughed in Roman's face, and said the only thing he acknowledges is that Roman is standing on a show he doesn't belong on, talking to someone who doesn't care about his opinion. And that's when everything went sideways. Roman dropped his microphone. That's never a good sign in professional wrestling because when someone drops a microphone, it usually means talking time is over and action time has begun. Roman started walking towards CM Punk with clear aggressive intent. Security personnel who were stationed around the stage started moving forward, trying to create a barrier between these two larger-than-life personalities. CM Punk dropped his microphone too, and he started moving toward Roman with equal aggression. The crowd was on their feet screaming, the announcers were yelling about how this situation was spiraling out of control, and you could feel that something big was about to happen. They met in the middle of that stage, face to face, nose to nose, neither man willing to give an inch. The security team surrounded them, trying to keep them separated, but you could see in their eyes that physical restraint was only going to work for so long. Words were being exchanged that the microphones couldn't pick up, personal things, heated things, the kind of trash talk that happens when two alphas are genuinely ready to fight. And then Roman did something that changed everything. He shoved CM Punk hard in the chest, sending him stumbling backward into the security personnel. The crowd gasped, because that physical contact crossed a line, it broke whatever fragile peace was being maintained by the presence of officials and security. CM Punk came back immediately with a shove of his own, and that's when all hell broke loose. The security team tried to keep them apart, but these are two of the most physically imposing and athletic performers in WWE history. They started throwing punches over and around the security guards, wild strikes born of genuine anger rather than choreographed performance. The distinction was clear to anyone watching because there was a rawness to it, a lack of polish that you don't normally see in worked WWE confrontations. These two men were genuinely trying to hurt each other, and it was both thrilling and terrifying to witness. More officials ran out from the back, trying to restore order, trying to separate these two forces of nature before someone got seriously injured. They managed to create some distance, pulling Roman to one side of the stage and Punk to the other. Both men were shouting at each other, straining against the people holding them back, looking for any opportunity to break free and continue the confrontation. The announce team was doing their best to call the action while also expressing concern for the safety of everyone involved. Michael Cole was talking about how he's never seen Roman this unhinged, this out of control, and he was worried about what might happen next. Corey Graves was trying to provide context, talking about the collision of egos and the inevitable clash when two men who refuse to be second to anyone find themselves in the same space. Just when it seemed like cooler heads might prevail, just when the officials thought they had the situation under control, Roman broke free. He exploded through the line of security personnel with the force of a charging bull, and he went straight for CM Punk. Before anyone could react, before Punk could properly defend himself, Roman speared him right there on the stage. Not on a mat, not in a ring with ropes and turnbuckles, but on the hard, unforgiving surface of the Monday Night Raw stage. The impact was sickening. You could hear it through the arena sound system, a thud that made everyone in attendance and everyone watching at home wince in sympathetic pain. CM Punk's body went limp from the impact. Roman didn't stop there. He started raining down punches on a defenseless CM Punk, closed fist shots that are normally forbidden in WWE, strikes that were clearly not being pulled or softened for safety. Officials swarmed Roman, trying to pull him off, but he was in a rage state, completely consumed by whatever emotion had driven him to this point. It took 8 men, 8 full-grown professional athletes and officials, to finally drag Roman Reigns off of CM Punk. Even then, Roman was still trying to get back to him, still shouting, still wanting more violence. Medical personnel rushed to CM Punk's side immediately. He was lying motionless on that stage, clearly hurt, possibly seriously injured. The crowd, which had been screaming and chanting just moments before, fell into a shocked silence. You could hear individual voices in the arena, people asking if Punk was okay, people demanding that Roman be arrested or suspended or punished in some way. The camera showed close-up shots of CM Punk's face, and he appeared to be dazed, possibly concussed from the impact of his head hitting the stage floor. Blood was visible, though it wasn't clear if it was from his mouth, his nose, or a cut somewhere on his face. The whole scene had transformed from an exciting confrontation into something that felt genuinely dangerous and uncomfortable to watch. Paul Heyman was trying to pull Roman away, trying to get him backstage before the situation could escalate even further. Roman finally allowed himself to be led away, but not before he turned back one more time and pointed at CM Punk's prone body. He shouted something that the cameras barely picked up, something about respecting the tribal chief, about knowing your place, about understanding the hierarchy. Then he disappeared through the curtain, leaving chaos and confusion in his wake. The final image of the segment was medical personnel attending to CM Punk, who was now being fitted with a neck brace as a precautionary measure. The announcers were somber, talking about how this was not how anyone wanted CM Punk's return story to go, how this attack was uncalled for and potentially career-threatening. Now let's talk about what this means, because the implications of what happened last night are massive and far-reaching. First and foremost, we have to address the sheer audacity of Roman Reigns showing up on Monday Night Raw in the first place. WWE has been very clear about brand separation since the most recent draft. SmackDown superstars stay on SmackDown, Raw superstars stay on Raw, and crossover appearances only happen during special events or with specific storyline justification. Roman showing up unannounced and attacking one of Raw's biggest stars is a massive breach of protocol. It shows a complete disregard for authority and structure. It demonstrates that Roman believes he's above the rules that govern everyone else in the company. And honestly, given his track record and his relationship with WWE management, he might be right. Roman has earned a level of freedom and privilege that very few performers in WWE history have ever enjoyed. But that doesn't make what he did right or justified. CM Punk was standing on that stage doing his job, cutting a promo, connecting with the audience, moving his own storyline forward. He wasn't challenging Roman, he wasn't talking about SmackDown, he wasn't inserting himself into Roman's business. And yet Roman felt the need to cross brand lines, interrupt Punk's moment, and ultimately assault him in a way that goes beyond typical wrestling physicality. The question everyone is asking is why? What motivated this attack? What is driving Roman to target CM Punk specifically? There are several theories floating around, and we need to examine each one carefully because they all have merit and they all tell us something about the current state of WWE and the psychology of these two competitors. Theory number 1 is that Roman sees CM Punk as a legitimate threat to his position as the face of WWE. This makes sense on multiple levels. CM Punk's return has been the biggest story in wrestling this year. Every time he appears, ratings spike. Merchandise sales are through the roof. Social media engagement goes crazy. The fans have embraced his return with a level of enthusiasm that WWE hasn't seen in years. That kind of momentum and popularity can make other top stars nervous, even someone as established and successful as Roman Reigns. Roman has worked incredibly hard to position himself as the undisputed top guy in WWE. He's main event multiple WrestleManias, he held championships for over 1,200 days, he's been the central focus of WWE programming for the better part of 4 years. The idea that someone could come back after being away and immediately recapture the attention and adoration of the WWE universe might feel like a threat to everything Roman has built. Theory number 2 is that this attack is personal rather than professional. There are rumors, and they're just rumors, so take them with a grain of salt, that Roman and Punk have legitimate heat with each other dating back years. The story goes that when Punk was still with WWE during his first run, there were backstage disagreements about creative direction, about who should be pushed as the top star, about the future of the company. Roman was being groomed as the chosen one even back then, the corporate pick to be the next John Cena, while Punk represented the alternative, the indie darling who succeeded despite not fitting the traditional WWE mold. Those philosophical differences allegedly created friction between them and their respective camps. When Punk left WWE in 2014, he gave interviews where he criticized the company's creative decisions and their handling of talent. While he didn't specifically name Roman in most of those critiques, the implication was there. He was critical of the way WWE manufactured stars rather than allowing them to develop organically based on merit and fan response. Roman could have taken those comments personally, feeling that Punk was diminishing his accomplishments and suggesting he didn't deserve his position. Theory number 3, and this one is interesting from a storytelling perspective, is that Roman is actually afraid of CM Punk. Not physically afraid, but afraid of what Punk represents and what he's capable of doing. CM Punk has always been the great disruptor in WWE. He's the guy who goes into business for himself when he feels strongly about something. He cuts promos that blur the line between character and reality. He says things that make management uncomfortable and that create unpredictable situations. For someone like Roman who has spent years carefully cultivating his image and his position within the company structure, CM Punk's unpredictability could be threatening. If Punk decides to start calling out Roman publicly, if he starts poking holes in Roman's narrative about being the greatest of all time, if he starts winning the fans over to the point where Roman is being booed out of buildings again like he was a few years ago, that could undermine everything Roman has achieved. So this attack could be a preemptive strike, an attempt to establish dominance and control the narrative before Punk has a chance to really get rolling. Regardless of which theory is correct, or if the truth is some combination of all three, what we witnessed last night was a watershed moment in WWE. This is the kind of angle that changes everything, that sets the course for the next 6 months or even year of programming. CM Punk vs. Roman Reigns is quite possibly the biggest dream match that WWE could produce right now. These are two of the most talented, most charismatic, most legitimate tough guys in the business. Both men can talk, both men can work in the ring, both men have legitimate fan bases that would support them in any storyline. The anticipation for a program between them has been building since the moment Punk returned to WWE, and now that anticipation has been justified and amplified by what happened last night. Let's think about where this story could go from here, because the possibilities are endless and all of them are exciting. First scenario, CM Punk is legitimately injured from the attack and has to be sidelined for several weeks. This would allow WWE to build sympathy for Punk while positioning Roman as an out-of-control heel who needs to be stopped. The storyline would focus on Punk's road to recovery and his burning desire for revenge. You could have weekly vignettes showing Punk rehabbing, talking about what this attack means to him, explaining why he needs to be the one to put Roman in his place. Meanwhile, Roman would be cutting promos about how he did what needed to be done, how Punk needed to learn his lesson about respecting the hierarchy, and how he has no regrets about his actions. The heat would build to a fever pitch, and when Punk finally returns, the pop would be enormous. Their eventual match would feel like a must-see event because of all the personal animosity and real injury involved. Second scenario, CM Punk isn't seriously hurt and returns very quickly, possibly even next week, looking for immediate revenge. This would create a chaotic situation where both men are constantly attacking each other across both brands. Security wouldn't be able to keep them apart. Management would be tearing their hair out trying to maintain order. Every week would bring a new confrontation, a new attack, a new escalation. This approach would be more action-heavy and less focused on slow-burn storytelling. It would satisfy fans who want to see these two men get physical immediately rather than waiting months for a payoff. The downside is that you risk burning through the feud too quickly if they're fighting every single week, but if the segments are creative and varied enough, it could work brilliantly. Third scenario, and this one is probably the most likely given WWE's current creative direction, is that this attack leads to involvement from authority figures and the creation of a massive match at an upcoming premium live event. Maybe it's the Royal Rumble, maybe it's Elimination Chamber, maybe they hold off until WrestleMania to give the feud time to properly breathe and develop. You could have Adam Pearce as the Raw general manager demanding that Roman be punished for what he did. Meanwhile, Nick Aldis as the SmackDown general manager is trying to protect his show's top star. There could be tension between management and the performers, ultimatums, stipulations, all the classic wrestling authority figure storylines that WWE does so well when they're executed properly. Eventually, a match gets made, but it's not just any match. It's something special, something with high stakes, something that makes both men and the audience feel like this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime confrontation. From an in-ring perspective, CM Punk vs. Roman Reigns would be absolutely phenomenal. Both men are excellent workers who understand psychology and storytelling. Roman has evolved so much as a performer over the past few years. He's no longer the guy who was getting booed because fans perceived him as being shoved down their throats. He's become a calculated, methodical wrestler who works a power style but can also go hold for hold when necessary. His character work has been exceptional, showing layers and depth that few people expected from him. CM Punk, on the other hand, is one of the best in-ring technicians of his generation. He can work any style, he can make anyone look good, and he has an innate understanding of how to work a crowd and take them on an emotional journey. When you put those two skill sets together, you get the potential for a classic match that people will be talking about for years. The promo battles alone would be worth the price of admission. CM Punk is arguably the best talker in wrestling history. His pipe bomb promo from 2011 is still considered one of the greatest unscripted moments in WWE history. He has the ability to make everything feel real, to blur the lines between character and person in a way that creates genuine investment from the audience. Roman has become an excellent promo guy in his own right, especially with Paul Heyman by his side providing additional layers to his character. The verbal sparring between these two would be must-see television every single week. You know that neither man would hold back, that they would say things designed to cut deep and create legitimate emotional responses. That kind of intensity is what makes professional wrestling special, what separates the great feuds from the merely good ones. There's also the question of what this means for the broader WWE landscape. If Roman and Punk are locked in a blood feud with each other, what does that mean for the championships? Roman isn't currently a champion after losing his titles earlier this year, but he's still positioned as the most important and dominant performer in the company. Punk hasn't challenged for a championship since returning, focusing instead on re-establishing himself and dealing with other storylines. Would their program involve a title, or would it be bigger than championships, focused purely on pride and dominance? Both approaches have merit. A championship on the line adds stakes and importance, but sometimes the best feuds are the ones where two men simply hate each other and need to fight regardless of gold or accolades. We also have to consider how this affects other performers on the roster. Cody Rhodes, who finally achieved his dream of becoming WWE champion after defeating Roman at WrestleMania, is now the top champion in the company. Does he get involved in this situation? Does he have an opinion about Roman crossing over to Raw and causing chaos? What about Seth Rollins, who has his own complicated history with both CM Punk and Roman Reigns? Seth and Punk had very real backstage issues a while back that created genuine tension. Seth has also been in the ring with Roman countless times as both partners and rivals. There are so many potential layers and interconnected storylines that WWE Creative could explore. The beauty of having a roster this talented and deep is that you can create complex narratives that involve multiple people and still have each individual story beat matter. Let me address something that I know some of you are thinking right now. You're wondering if this whole thing was a work or if there were legitimate elements of reality involved. That's a fair question because WWE has been playing with the boundaries between fiction and reality more than ever before. The truth is that we probably won't know the full story for months or even years. What we saw looked very real in terms of the intensity and physicality, but these are professional performers who are incredibly skilled at making things look real. That's literally their job. The fact that we're even questioning whether it was genuine or worked is a testament to how well everyone involved executed the segment. In modern wrestling, the best angles are the ones that make you wonder where the character ends and the person begins. When you can't quite tell what's real and what's predetermined, that's when you're truly invested in the story. One thing we can say with certainty is that WWE is fully behind this confrontation happening. Whether it was planned exactly as it unfolded or whether there were improvised elements, the company allowed Roman to show up on Raw, allowed him to physically attack CM Punk, and allowed the cameras to capture every moment of it. That's not something that happens by accident. WWE is very careful about what makes it to air, what gets promoted on their social media channels, and what angles they push as major storylines. The fact that they're leaning into this, that they're promoting it heavily, tells us that this is going to be a central focus of WWE programming going forward. And honestly, that's exciting. This is the kind of big fight feel that wrestling thrives on. This is what makes people tune in every week and talk about the product with their friends and family. From a business perspective, this angle is potentially worth millions of dollars to WWE. The publicity alone has been incredible. Social media has been on fire since last night, with wrestling fans debating every aspect of what happened. Mainstream sports media is picking up the story because CM Punk and Roman Reigns are names that transcend wrestling and reach casual audiences. When you can create a storyline that breaks through to the mainstream, that gets covered by ESPN and other major outlets, you're doing something right. The eventual match or series of matches between these two will draw significant buy rates or viewership depending on how WWE presents them. People will pay money to see this confrontation reach its conclusion. That's the ultimate goal of any wrestling promotion, to create must-see moments that audiences feel compelled to watch and discuss. This has that potential in spades. Now I want to address the fans who are concerned about this becoming too similar to other WWE storylines or falling into predictable patterns. That's a legitimate concern because WWE does tend to follow certain formulas when booking their major programs. The worry is that this will become another authority figure-heavy storyline with lots of talking, lots of contract signings, lots of pull-apart brawls but not enough actual wrestling and resolution. Or that WWE will drag this out so long that it loses heat and becomes boring rather than exciting. These are valid criticisms based on past booking decisions. However, I would argue that when WWE has the right people involved and the right level of commitment from all parties, they can produce storylines that feel fresh and compelling even within familiar structures. CM Punk and Roman Reigns are both creative enough and invested enough in their characters that they can take a standard WWE formula and elevate it through execution and performance. The key will be maintaining the intensity that we saw last night and not allowing the feud to become watered down through overexposure or repetitive segments. WWE needs to carefully manage how often these two men appear together, how often they physically interact, and how the story progresses from week to week. Not every segment needs to be a pull-apart brawl. Sometimes the best heat is built through words and through anticipation rather than constant physicality. The more you keep them apart while still advancing the storyline, the more special it feels when they do eventually meet. That delayed gratification is what makes the eventual payoff so satisfying. If they fight every single week, it stops feeling important. If they build toward major confrontations and deliver when it matters most, that's when you create legendary moments. Another aspect worth discussing is how this affects the legacy of both men. Roman Reigns has built an incredible legacy over the past few years. His championship reign was historic, his character development has been remarkable, and he's proven that he deserves to be mentioned among the all-time greats in WWE history. But to truly cement that legacy, to truly be considered the greatest of all time, he needs to have classic programs with other all-time greats. He needs to prove he can deliver on the biggest stage against the toughest competition. CM Punk represents that level of competition. A program between them, if done correctly, could be the defining feud of both of their careers. CM Punk's legacy is already secure in many ways, but adding a classic program with Roman to his resume further solidifies his status as one of the best ever. These are the kind of dream matches that fans debate for decades, that get rewatched on the WWE Network over and over, that become part of wrestling folklore. We should also talk about the role of Paul Heyman in all of this, because Heyman is always a crucial component in anything involving Roman Reigns. Heyman has been the perfect advocate for Roman, adding layers of verbal excellence and strategic thinking to Roman's character. But here's where things get interesting. Paul Heyman has history with CM Punk too. Heyman was involved in one of Punk's most memorable feuds years ago, and their interactions have always been fascinating to watch. The potential for Heyman to play mind games with Punk, to twist narratives and create doubt, is immense. Heyman could be the devil on Roman's shoulder, encouraging him to be more vicious, more ruthless, more willing to cross lines. Or Heyman could potentially be a voice of reason, trying to keep Roman focused and controlled. Either direction would be compelling television. The promos between Heyman and Punk alone could be incredible, two master manipulators with silver tongues trying to outmaneuver each other verbally. Let's think about the fan reaction to all of this, because that's ultimately what matters most in professional wrestling. The initial response online has been overwhelmingly positive. People are excited about this confrontation. They're debating who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and who they want to see win. That's exactly what you want when you're building a major program. You want people to be invested emotionally, to have strong opinions, to feel compelled to tune in and see what happens next. There's been some criticism from fans who feel the attack was too brutal or who worry about CM Punk being positioned as a victim rather than a strong competitor. That's worth monitoring as the storyline develops. Punk's character works best when he's fighting from a position of defiant strength rather than vulnerability. If WWE books him as simply being beaten down by Roman without giving him opportunities to fire back and stand tall, that could undermine the effectiveness of the feud. The ideal booking would have Punk and Roman trading victories and defeats in various confrontations, with neither man able to gain a clear advantage until their definitive match. That creates drama, uncertainty, and makes both men look strong throughout the program. You don't want one guy to look weak at the expense of building the other up, you want both to look like legitimate threats who are evenly matched. That's when you get the most investment from the audience, when either man could believably win and people are genuinely unsure of the outcome. WWE has struggled with that type of booking at times, often defaulting to having one person clearly dominant throughout a feud, but when they get it right, when they book true back-and-forth competition, that's when feuds become legendary. There are also interesting parallels between this situation and other famous confrontations in wrestling history. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon, the anti-authority rebel versus the corporate power. CM Punk is in some ways a spiritual successor to Stone Cold in terms of his anti-establishment persona, while Roman represents the chosen one, the company's golden boy, similar to how The Rock was positioned during the Attitude Era. Rock and Austin had their legendary battles based partly on that dynamic, and we could be seeing something similar play out here. Or think about Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, two performers with legitimate backstage tension who channeled that into incredible in-ring work. The best wrestling programs often have elements of reality mixed with fiction, where you can sense there's genuine emotion behind the performances rather than just two people reading lines and executing moves. Looking ahead to the immediate future, the big question is what happens on SmackDown this week. Does CM Punk show up looking for revenge? Does Roman address his actions on his home show? How does WWE Creative choose to advance this storyline in the coming days and weeks? We're in that exciting phase where anything could happen, where the story could go in multiple directions, and where every week feels crucial. This is when wrestling is at its best, when you genuinely don't want to miss an episode because you know something important could happen at any moment. WWE needs to capitalize on this momentum, needs to keep delivering compelling content, needs to make every segment matter so that the audience stays invested throughout the entire program. What I find most encouraging about this whole situation is that it feels genuine. Whether every aspect of it is predetermined or not, the performances have been authentic, the emotion has felt real, and the stakes seem meaningful. That's what modern audiences respond to. They're sophisticated enough to know that wrestling is predetermined, but they still want to believe in what they're watching. They want to suspend disbelief and get emotionally invested. When performers and creative teams can deliver that experience, that's when wrestling transcends mere entertainment and becomes art. What happened last night between Roman Reigns and CM Punk has the potential to be that kind of art if everyone involved continues to commit fully to the story and deliver at the highest level. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with more questions than answers, with anticipation building for what comes next, with debates raging across the wrestling community, and with the promise of something truly special developing. This is why we watch professional wrestling. Not just for the athletic competition, though that's important. Not just for the storylines, though those are crucial. But for those moments when everything comes together perfectly, when the right performers are in the right program at the right time, and magic happens. Roman Reigns vs. CM Punk has the potential to be that kind of magic. It has the potential to be a defining program that people remember for decades. It has the potential to elevate both men to even greater heights in terms of their legacies and their places in wrestling history. And it has the potential to remind everyone why WWE is the premier professional wrestling promotion in the world when they're firing on all cylinders. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me who you think was in the right here. Was Roman justified in attacking CM Punk because Punk needed to show respect to the tribal chief? Or did Roman cross a line, attacking an unprovoked opponent on a show he shouldn't even have been on? Do you think this will lead to the best feud of the year? How do you think this should end? I want to hear all your thoughts, all your predictions, all your reactions to what we witnessed last night. Make sure you've hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, and make sure you share this video with your friends because this is the conversation everyone in the wrestling world needs to be having right now. Thank you so much for watching.